I love when the Republicans are like, oh, dude, Harris is such an easy lock. Like, it's going to be so easy to defeat her. Meanwhile, they're simultaneously trying to get all of their lawyers to sue in every state to keep Joe Biden on the ticket. Harris is so easy to beat, which is why we're certainly not panicking right now. Hallucinating a world in which like Biden was going to crawl across the convention. Oh my Lord.
Believe Kamala can win at the top of the ticket. I don't believe this. I don't believe that. I think I can do it. Kamala Harris just said, come on in, the water's warm.
Well, and you know what I thought about when I saw that both Clintons got behind her? I was thinking of Hillary Clinton, because she is a woman who knows what it's like to run against Donald Trump. And that could be the position we see Harris in. We don't know yet. Obviously, we are keeping our powder dry. We're waiting to see what Democrats decide here. But it does seem like that's a scenario the Trump campaign has been prepping for. They have been singling out Harris. I noticed it multiple times when you and I were in Milwaukee last week for the Republican convention. And I just wonder what, on its early basis, what you think that race would look like, a Harris versus Donald Trump.
You know, the prosecutor.
I will give kudos to Nancy Pelosi for pushing Biden out. I will. She did that. Even though at the last second she was like, maybe we have an open convention, which I didn't like too much. She talked to Politico yesterday, which I didn't have a lot of time to cover because I was balling, but that was not great. But everything else, aside from that, she has been very active.
Women. That's something that the Trump team does a lot.
I think she's angling for Newsom, which I don't think is a good idea, especially because there's too much like Newsom has too much stink on him. A lot of people like him. But not for president. Obviously, I don't think that she will. Try to cook the ticket like that. That would be ridiculous. But a double California ticket is crazy. Is actually kind of stupid.
Especially black voters who are so critical. And so you've got a real matchup here, because you've got somebody who has, at times been very, very strong in that prosecutor role. Most people think about Kamala Harris. They don't think about her as vice president. They think about her being in the Senate, grilling nominees from the Trump administration, grilling CEOs, just going after people and putting them in their place. So that side of her personality gets a chance to come forward now in a very different way. Kamala Harris won a lot of support from people when Biden stumbled. He didn't do well in the debate. Everybody was freaking out. And I was sitting right next to Anderson Cooper when Anderson Cooper brought Kamala Harris on. Mm-hmm. She was cool. She was calm. She was collected. She was strong. There was no time for anybody to hand her talking points. There was no time for anybody to write up a speech. There was no teleprompter. She had to just literally walk out there.
Okay, bro, they're just glazing. Oh my God, they have one speed. I swear to God, they have one speed. It's just glaze mode. They switched it up. They switched on our boy. They're so fake. Fake friends all around us. You know what I'm saying? They're just like, that Anderson Cooper response was mid, okay? Kamala Harris was not exactly cooking in that Anderson Cooper response in the immediate aftermath of the debate. To be fair to her, it was an impossible situation to like massage your way out of, to message your way out of, to manipulate your way out of. You couldn't do that. And she didn't actually do a great job either, but who cares?
For Biden, but for Trump, he just became the oldest presidential nominee in American history. Van Jones, obviously... we're going to be watching all this very closely. Van Jones, thank you for that. Wolf, back
by
to
the
you.
way, Elon is losing his
Caitlin,
fucking
thank
mind.
for me as well. Our viewers are always.
Biden's announcement. Here's a fun little chaos moment. One last incredibly chaotic moment from the messy bitch who loves drama, Joe Biden. Biden's announcement stunned White House and campaign aides who up until this afternoon were insisting he'd stay in the race. We're all finding out by a tweet, said one Dem. None of us understand what's happening. Yeah. You guys don't understand a lot of things, do you? There's a lot you don't understand, I think. Like, for example, you didn't understand that, like, you could just hold on for dear life to a carcass because you're an opportunist careerist, okay? Yeah. I mean, I have all the smoke. I do not care about these people's, interest in the matter.
Going to outline particularly on foreign affairs, the very dire situation we are in this country, and a movement, whether it is, think about Vance and opposing funding for Ukraine. He's going to talk, I think, a lot about foreign policy. It is his lane, and it's going to be very statesman-like, very almost Churchill-like, I think. And he's capable of delivering that kind of speech, and I look forward to hearing from him.
Senator Heitkamp, thank you. And if you were just joining us now, it has been an extraordinary moment.
By the way, Americans may not realize it, but they just witnessed a civil coup. No, dude, this isn't a civil coup, okay? This is a party actually behaving like a party. Like, it's ridiculous. Biden can technically be VP again. Yeah, he should do it. He should run for VP. It's just, like, it's getting Biden to come to terms with the reality that is in front of the party. Okay, that's it. That's not a coup. They didn't like force him out. They didn't put a gun to his head. They didn't use the military. It's ridiculous. Biden is still the president of the United States of America. He's just no longer running for re-election. How would you know? You're right. They put a gun to his head. They hit him with the COVID beam.
As early as last night to his staff was that he is staying in. It is full speed ahead. She said that this is a decision that the president himself only came to very, very late before the actual announcement went public. She also told the staff that now they need to put their head down, they need to stay focused, and she said they need to protect Vice President Harris. And that is where all eyes are going to be in the coming days. I am told by a senior administration official that President Biden is expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu this coming week, and that Vice President Harris is as well. Every move that the vice president makes, her influence on the global stage as well, any campaign stop she makes, that's where the microscope is really going to be under. And another key point as all of this is playing out, since we last spoke, Rachel, there's been a pretty significant development when it comes to the donor class. So a donor I had spoken to earlier said that so many of them were in disagreement about the best way to move forward, that a lot of them did not want to see a coronation of Vice President Harris. They wanted to see some sort of mini primary play out in a very expedited fashion. Well, now since then, you've had powerful senators and Congress people. You've also had the Congressional Black Caucus. You have had major names, including the Clintons, come out and say they are all backing Vice President Harris. Since those developments, I'm told that donors are now quickly coalescing around Vice President Harris. And we're also learning that more donors are asking about how they can pitch in, how they can give more to Vice President Harris. So you are seeing a big shift just in the last several minutes and in the last hour.
Selena, I want to ask you, because President Biden has made it clear that he wanted to have that second debate with former President Donald Trump. It's an ABC News debate that was supposed to take place just weeks before the election, coming at a very critical...
They have to do another debate. Trump will look so weak if he says no. Like, he will look so incredibly weak. Americans want to see the matchup.
Get on the debate stage.
It's going to be another banger of a debate.
Away, potentially, if she is the Democratic nominee, do you believe that she'll want to get on a debate stage with former President Donald Trump?
There are just so many questions at this point, but she would be a strong debater. She's a former prosecutor. This is someone who can really go after and attack people. That is what she is known for doing very well on a public fashion. So she would be a strong contender, I'm told by multiple people, against former President Donald Trump. She will know exactly where to hit him and where his sore spots are. And when it comes to the vice presidential debate, of course, now all eyes are on who would be her vice presidential pick, right? But this is probably going to be full steam ahead. I've still got to work the sources, work the phones to figure out exactly what their plan is on that debate. But Vice President Harris, I'm told, would be very strong.
Thank you, Selena. And I want to bring in now our chief Washington correspondent, John Carl. John, you're getting word and hearing reaction from Donald Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's a relatively short statement, Rachel, and it perfectly encapsulates how Republicans will deal with Kamala Harris on the assumption that she becomes the replacement at the top of the ticket. So this
means auto win for Trump? No, it doesn't. I think a lot of people are it's entirely dependent on who the VP is, but more importantly than that, how the Democrats message going forward. Okay? But no, it is not an automatic dub at all.
Anything you could attack Joe Biden for, you can now attack Kamala Harris for. The statement goes on to accuse Kamala Harris of, quote, covering up Joe Biden's mental capacity, saddling the nation.
The only counter to that, by the way, is to say Joe Biden is still completely mentally fit. Just lie and say he's still completely mentally fit to run the country. But running for re-election while also running for the country or running the country is entirely two different dynamics. And Joe Biden did this because he wanted to be a more capable administrator in his last, couple of months in office, because he loves this country that much. And he wanted to present a fresh new face to the American public that will continue his legacy even better than before.
Democrats from pushing forward with this effort to replace Joe Biden by saying there would be legal challenges if there was an effort to make a change after the primaries. But they are now pivoting to a race that they expect that they will now have against Kamala Harris.
And, John, we know that former President Donald Trump out on the campaign trail, while he has focused much of his attacks on President Joe Biden, he's also attacked Vice President Kamala Harris as well. If she is, in fact, the Democratic nominee, how do we expect the Trump campaign to take on Harris?
Well, they're going to make much of the fact that she was given responsibility for dealing with the problem of undocumented immigrants coming over the border. Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her. She was given the job of dealing with all the migration that was coming up from Central America. But they will portray her as the one that was in charge of the border, which, of course, is issue number one for Republicans.
Yeah, so except this is why I thought, this is exactly the reason why I thought Joe Biden hitting a right-wing slant on immigration was an unimaginably bad move. I think this is her biggest weakness, because she's seen as the border czar, and it is the weakest issue for the Democrats. And Americans have become increasingly more right-wing. So going forward from this moment on, they need to say oh, we are trying to be the adults about the border situation. We want to process migrants more. The Republicans want to put them in concentration camps. Don't even talk about your policies on the border. Talk about how Republicans want to put every person with even any kind of Hispanic origin, any kind of Hispanic background, directly into concentration camps. Because the way Republicans always benefit from putting out these bold declarative statements without any emphasis on what that policy would look like in action. They did this with abortion, okay? Oh, Democrats want to do abortion, at 9 months. Democrats want to do abortion at 9 months. Abortion is murder. Abortion is murder. Look where that got them. Objectively unpopular, okay? Objectively unpopular. And is part of the reason why the Democratic ticket still holds a little bit of weight in this country, despite the fact that many Americans experience negative real wage growth for 2 years under the Biden administration. Okay? So, for that reason, what they have to do is cut against the narrative and explain to Americans what it would look like to deport tens of millions of people that have lived on U.S. soil, that have participated in the American economy in incredibly important ways, and how unimaginably cruel and devastating that reality would be. They should have done this for the past 4 years as Republicans were cutting this kind of narrative. They should have done this for a very long time. They didn't do it. They still have an opportunity to try and reframe the narrative. Now that there is a new slate, now that there's a blank slate to a certain degree, okay? Now that there is a blank slate to a certain degree, this is an opportunity to restructure. I genuinely think that if they try to go, oh no, we went hard on the border. I'm the border czar. I went hard on the border. Donald Trump is lying. He didn't want to do the right-wing immigration bill that Joe Biden presented because, he was just he wanted to use the border as a talking point. That is weak. That's weak nuts. That is really, really bad. Okay? That's really bad.
Happy with a rerun. They weren't happy with the candidates and the choice that they had. And now they will have a different choice. And if it's Kamala Harris, it is that generational choice you're talking to, not in the number 2 spot, but in the number 1 spot. And Americans, they've been telling pollsters this for a while.
Kamala tweeted
yearn for a new kind of politics. All of a sudden, Donald Trump looks like the man from yesterday. Trumpism and the MAGA movement.
Oh, let's hear what Axelrod has to say. He was urging Biden to drop out months ago.
I mean, it's, you know, Van Jones was talking earlier about what a tough decision this must have been for President Biden. And when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, I mean, to go from a little over 3 weeks ago, showing up in Atlanta to debate Donald Trump, and then to this decision now.
Can you help me get paid from Hutch? He blocked and banned me from his chat when I try to collect. He's been calling both you and I idiots. So the bet is, if Biden wins 2024 presidential election, if he does not, I get 500, or if not, I get 500. Assuming he runs against Trump, yeah, he's the incumbent. If he's not president in 2025, I win the bet. I'll accept a $500 bet within those terms. I mean, yeah, he's not going to pay you. I'm gonna be honest with you. He is probably too busy, deleting his tweets about how everyone is stupid for not riding with Biden.
Donald Trump, and that may well be Kamala Harris. You know, I think some of her supporters have done her a disservice because they say, well, she's there, you know, she's historic, you can't bypass her, and so on. The real case they should be making is why she'd be the strongest candidate, and there are some really strong arguments to suggest she would be. But she might be stronger if she comes through a process.
Were for people saying Kamala Harris is a black and Indian woman and Americans are sexist and will not accept this. You do not understand. There is one side of this story. You can overcome these weaknesses, I guess, if you can outcompete the other side. Barack Obama was the first black man, was the first black president. How was he able to do that? It was because he absolutely destroyed Hillary Clinton in the primaries, and he was able to put forward a clear and coherent and very bold, very progressive agenda. Okay, change, hope, and change. He won by pretty solid numbers. He not only won, but he also had a Senate that was a supermajority for the Democrats. He fell up, but that's besides the point. Okay, he became this neoliberal demon immediately after he got into office, but that's not what we're talking about right now. His middle name was Hussein, and we were a lot closer. We were a lot closer to the worst kinds of Islamophobia you've ever seen, whose name is Barack Hussein Obama, okay? Barack Hussein Obama, who Hillary Clinton's camp literally called a Muslim, okay, was able to become president. Problem is Kamala Harris charismatic enough? Is Kamala Harris going to be able to put forward a clear and coherent message that Americans respond to positively? Will she be able to overcome some of the weaknesses of being associated with the Biden regime? These are real problems here because she's not an unknown person to a certain degree. She is a known entity. She was the vice president. Lucky for her, they only talked about how silly of a goose she is. You know, she was like, oh yeah, she's so silly. She laughs a lot. She's stupid. That's what they presented her as. So we'll see. Senator John Fetterman, people pushed out an honorable man, loving father, and great president before an absolute sleazeball like Menendez. Congratulations. Yeah, no, he's just worried that people whose brains don't work too good are getting pushed out. That's what it is. He's got his own personal motivation. Okay, he's like, oh, you don't like it when someone is stupid. Like I thought Americans wanted car crash victims in positions of power. I don't understand. Thanks, John Fetterman.
Week, but in the rest of the country, not so much. He's a vulnerable candidate and can be beaten, and Democrats are going to begin to focus on that. There's a lot of sadness about the president, a lot of love and affection for him, but I think people are also steeled to the task at hand.
Yeah, I spoke to Trump moments after Biden put out this statement, and he called him the worst president in U.S. history. And then he said that he does believe Harris would be easier to beat. Obviously, we don't know if that's who he'll be facing in this election, but this is not just uncertainty for Democrats, it's uncertainty for the Trump campaign as well. David Axelrod, stand by because I want to get back to you, but we also have Abby Phillip here joining, CNN anchor and CNN's senior political correspondent. And Abby, I mean, this is just such a seismic moment in this campaign. I wonder what you're hearing from Democratic sources, from donors about what this new landscape looks like now.
Yeah, Caitlin, I've been talking to a number of people today and definitely over the last several days. And the big thing right now is how quickly can Vice President Harris consolidate this field. And I spoke with a top fundraiser for the Biden-Harris campaign who's in touch with dozens of donors who said, you know, right now, this is hers to win or to lose. And frankly, she has 24 to 48 hours to do so. But this person did not believe that there was any sort of truly organized effort to push someone else other than the vice president.
I love when the Republicans are like, oh, dude, Harris is such an easy lock. Like, it's going to be so easy to defeat her. Meanwhile, they're simultaneously trying to get all of their lawyers to sue in every state to keep Joe Biden on the ticket. Harris is so easy to beat, which is why we're certainly not panicking right now on the Republican side.
Also said that the donors are prepared to back her, and that's going to be critically important. This is being viewed by many people in the Democratic Party as the path of least resistance. She has the clearest path to inheriting the campaign infrastructure, the clearest path to inheriting the money that has been raised by the Biden-Harris campaign up until this point. And the other thing, you know, talking to another source who's very close to the vice president, there is a lot of concern about the really compressed timeline right now to get all of these ducks in a row. There are so many decisions that need to be made, so many parts of this that are completely unknown, and even the people who are the most supportive of her, who want this to eventually end up with the vice president as the top of the ticket, they are worried, is how this person put it to me. So look, the next day or two are going to be extremely critical. One of the other factors in all of this is going to be which candidate is best positioned to actually get the delegates, because that's really where this ends up at this point. And many people close to the vice president have stressed to me there are a lot of structural and political reasons why she is by far in the best position. When we talk about the importance of black voters and black delegates are to this Democratic Party, that's not just a talking point. It's a real practicality about where the powerhouses are within the Democratic National Committee. And those are the people in the coming days who are going to decide how this goes and who this goes to. And I imagine shortly after that, the discussion about who would be her running mate is going to accelerate as well. I'm already hearing, as I'm sure you are as well, a lot of whispers about that as well, Caitlin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the amount of the ways that Democrats' phones are blowing up today, it cannot be overstated. I mean, everyone is talking about this and asking that very question. One, who's the nominee going to be? And two, if it is Harris, what does that ticket look like? Abby Phillip, we'll continue to report on this, continue to have those conversations. Let us know what you're hearing. We also have Scott Jennings, a CNN senior political commentator, here with us. Scott, I mean, this is just as much uncertainty for Republicans as it is for Democrats. You heard what former President Trump said to me moments after Biden announced this. We're already seeing a well-funded super PAC of his attacking Harris, something they had kind of been preparing in case this very scenario happened. What does this moment mean for Republicans?
Yeah, it's shocking. I mean, if I had known the second coming of the Lord Almighty was going to happen on the East Coast this weekend, I wouldn't have gone to San Diego. I'd have been there with you. But here we are, 3 weeks after the cheap fakes, by the way, episode, which the most embarrassing gaslighting that ever happened. I mean, Republicans are going to paint Kamala Harris
He's
as
mad.
Joe Biden.
She's
been number 2 in the administration that has a mid-30s approval rating, that's overseeing this inflation crisis. She was the border czar.
He's so
for the
mad
immigration
today.
crisis that everybody is mad
Fuck
about.
you,
and
Scott.
on top of that, she's been one of the principal ringleaders of the cover-up of Joe Biden's actual condition. So I hear I've been listening for the last couple of hours, a lot of crowing and pumping up.
Scott is the Republican on the CNN lineup.
Not a great politician.
For those of you who
She ran
don't
for
know.
president once, and it was a
He's
complete
mad.
disaster. And right now, it looks like she, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and a bunch of rich people have just pushed Joe Biden out of this race, and in the process, disenfranchised millions of Democrat voters.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Everyone who voted for Joe Biden in the primaries is like, yeah, I'm not voting for Kamala Harris. Get the f out of here, dude.
Is it interesting to you that we haven't seen a picture of Joe Biden today? We don't have a picture of him signing the letter. I mean, this is a huge decision. Also, the letter doesn't say why exactly. Why is he stepping down? He's the current.
He's so mad.
He's the current
he's
president.
so mad, dude.
He's
Come on. Look, I don't know what happens tomorrow, but today I'm going to sit I'm going to kick back and I'm going to enjoy the Republicans in a state of absolute panic.
Unanswered by this letter and the mystery surrounding him today.
Yeah, well, he does have COVID, so I think that's probably why we're not seeing him. You know, I just talked to Chris Coons, his co-chair, who spoke to him after this announcement.
We didn't even see Joe Biden. And also, what if maybe it wasn't him who signed it?
From people like House Speaker Mike Johnson. But I do wonder, Scott, what does this mean if Harris is the nominee? I mean, let's game this out for a second. What does that mean for the Trump campaign? Because they have been preparing to run against President Biden.
Why would he panic? Isn't this the best news for them?
After that debate in Atlanta,
no.
But this is, you know,
guys,
even
Biden is so old. Please, he was literally, what chances he has of winning right now are already marginal. They were going to only get worse from this point on. How do you not see this? Like, no, this was not good. This was a depressive voter turnout re-election, okay? This was a rerun. The momentum was only in the Trump direction. I'm telling you, dude. That's the reason why Republicans are so mad right now and trying everything that they can to just be like, yo, dude, it's so up. It's so up how they did my boy Joe Biden. Like, oh my God, all the primary voters voted for him. It's like, no, they voted for the Democrat, okay? They voted for whoever the f is at the top of the ticket. You have an unprecedented level of interest in a race that was unimaginably boring and uninteresting for many people who were not interested in voting at all. This is the opportunity for the Democratic Party to put forward some kind of competent leadership and actually use this blank slate in some respects to their advantage. Okay, now it's actually no longer an old person against an older person. These are the types of things that, like, Americans in the margins care about. Many of you are talking about like how she's a black woman, she's an Indian woman. These are the types of things that American voters care about. Yeah, sure. But you know what else they care about? Old people who are chaotic. Old people who they don't really like that much. Old people who have also taken away 50% of the country's reproductive rights, reproductive freedoms. Watch the Dem Party bed and put a conservative in the front seat. Yeah, I don't think that that's a good idea. I hope they don't do that. That's why the people that I've been mentioning are not actually conservative. Shapiro would be more conservative, in my opinion, than even like a Bashar or even Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly's pretty middle of the road as well. And the thing is, I don't really trust the Democrats. As I've said time and time again, they do have the worst instincts, but this is a moment where they actually moved in a direction, albeit a difficult one, but they moved in the correct direction. So if they keep up this momentum, and they put forward a decent plan of attack, okay, and don't lean to like the more conservative losing battles like the border, and instead lean into winning battles like abortion, okay, like the economy rebounding, things of that nature, then it's a pretty solid opportunity to maintain all of those voters who were saying that they were going to vote for Joe Biden and pick up more in demographics that you need to pick up to win key states. Okay, what is this? Some points to back you up. GOP strategist Terry Sullivan tells CBS News that his fellow GOP operatives are less than enthusiastic. They're the dog that caught the car, says Scott McFarlane. Kyle Griffin, Trump desperately wanted President Biden to stay in the race, according to multiple reports. This is true, okay? They did. They really wanted Biden. And the reason why they really wanted Biden is because they thought Biden is the candidate to beat. And there was a likelihood that Biden was the candidate to beat. But like I said, Democrats can still up the bag here, but they have a wonderful opportunity. This is also a pretty solid narrative here as well. Harris is such a good candidate because she can credibly claim the accomplishments of the administration without being held responsible for any of Biden's specific mistakes. She literally exists in the context of what came before, but is also unburdened by what has been. That is true. She can literally dismantle the genocide Joe narrative. Not to say that she will, because that requires bravery. I don't know if she's going to be courageous enough, but she has separated herself early on. She separated herself a couple months prior from Biden on this issue. Okay, I'm telling you, this also creates to genuinely galvanize the youth vote, to genuinely get the youth vote back into action, actually coping. Kamala is not beating him. No shot. Lamau actually coping. Yeah, get ready for a lot of people basically saying that, like, she's a woman, Americans are too misogynistic, which while they simultaneously are just being that person. I think Kamala Harris is not a great candidate, but she is the one that the Democratic Party put forward. I'm just analyzing this with what I've seen so far. In a world where Joe Biden is trailing behind Donald Trump closely, despite the fact that he's a cadaver, I see a world where there's only more votes to gain in this process. The donations pouring in are coming from big ticket donors, by the way. But that is only good because it's going to lead to a lot of money being dumped in to reframing the narrative and getting people to pay attention and getting people interested in the form of ad spends. Obviously, hundreds of millions of dollars thus far was not getting that done for Joe. Okay, so there is a little bit of uncertainty there. We don't know if the hundreds of millions of dollars behind Kamala Harris is actually going to get people to be interested in Kamala Harris, is going to get people to want to vote for Kamala Harris. I suspect that it will do far better for Kamala Harris than Joe Biden. Okay, I think regular voters will get excited too. Biden just inspired no enthusiasm. Yes. How charismatic is she? Not great. She is not great, I will say. But while she's not great, this man was a cadaver, and the voters were still like, yeah, I think whoever is on the top of that ticket, I'm voting for. 67% of Democratic Party voters that said that they were voting for Biden were voting against Trump. Their main motivation was voting against Trump. You need to understand that. That is important. This is still a Trump race, okay? That's not a good race that the Republicans want to have. Okay, Trump is a very unpopular person. You need to understand. This almost got, and people were like celebrating. And by people, I mean not myself. I would never do such a thing. Okay, but others were. I was celebrating for other reasons. You know, maybe I was celebrating because he survived. I was excited. But like everyone was celebrating. Half of the country was celebrating. Well, not half, but you know, around 30% of the country was excited that he survived and he's like the Messiah, the second coming of Jesus Christ. The rest of the country was like, the rest of the voters at least were like, yeah, no, this is kind of sad.
The race, Lord Almighty's not coming down.
But it wasn't enough to quell concerns.
Lord
the
Almighty
calls
did come
from
down.
Democrats
He got COVID.
for him to step aside, growing to a steady stream.
I salute President Biden. I just feel that it's time for him to step aside if we were to be able to protect what he allowed us to gain in 2020, which was a victory for democracy, but he delivered.
Yeah. He did the right thing. He did it. He got us across the finish line.
She
Come
likes
on.
a lot, knows very well. And as we saw just a little while ago, he has already come out to endorse her publicly. That happened very quickly. And I know their camps speak to each other quite often. The other names will also be familiar. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear has been mentioned a lot. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. There are clearly others, but those four names are the names I keep hearing about.
Yeah, those names have been out there for a while. Casey,
you know, I was going to say those are the names that are in all of the conversations that I'm having right now. And we saw the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, come out and say something very nice about Biden. From what I can tell, has yet to endorse Kamala Harris. Maybe that email has crossed, so forgive me if I'm a little bit slow on this, but I do think that's an interesting contrast in terms of when you compare it to how Mark Kelly is handling it. And obviously, they have to think a lot. And I had a lot of conversations with the RNC about this, actually, about how this race is going to change with her at the top of the ticket, what the strengths and weaknesses of a Harris ticket are. They're different from the strengths and weaknesses with Biden at the top of the ticket, and they really have to think through that and consider that as they're thinking about picking their number two.
One of the advantages, a major advantage she had as becoming the heir apparent to the president after he drops out was that it's the Biden-Harris campaign that raised tens of millions of dollars. And there's a ton of money in that campaign, and since it's the Biden-Harris campaign, she can continue to use that money as the presidential nominee.
That's right. And if they're worried about logistics, it is a heck of a lot, and Karen, I'm sure you can weigh in on this, logistically easier to have Kamala Harris be the top of the ticket here. The other thing that you, I think, have to think through, and I was having a conversation with a very smart operative that's been in Kamala Harris's circle in the past, has been inside the Biden administration. They were arguing, as someone who has advised a lot of candidates, right? If you are Josh Shapiro, if you are Andy Beshear, if you are someone that has national ambitions, what is the right move for you right now? Putting yourself out there, angering an enormous segment of the party in black voters by challenging Kamala Harris, and also just potentially going on to lose either that fight or the election, one, both. Instead, you could be her number two, be seen as someone who is stepping up for the party. And if Democrats lose in November, you've only been on the ticket for 80 days. Is it really your fault? So I think that there's some of that going on behind the scenes, too.
Audie, I want to get your thoughts on how the African
of this entire thing. I would say, I mean, think about it. I think it was May 30th that we were all sitting here talking about how the race would change sentence caps because of Trump's conviction, and it's just been a roller coaster.
Okay, Wolf, calm down, bro. He's like, oh, I want to hear your thoughts on the African American vote.
One of the concerns they have is, will it look like big donors just big-footed the voters in the Democratic primary process and got the result that they wanted? So I think that's why you hear...
Bro, this only works as a narrative if like 70% of the Democrats that said they were voting for Biden weren't saying they want Biden to drop out. Like I'm sorry. If this was like a Hillary Clinton style situation and the donors were actually at odds with the rest of the voters, with the rest of the party, then yeah, that makes sense. Right now, on the other hand, the donors were completely in line with what the broad majority wanted. Oh, dude, by the way, this is awesome. If Kamala Harris does this, she actually wins, okay?
So I don't buy that argument that impeachment does not make sense, Senate will acquit. I don't buy that argument. There needs to be accountability. I mean, what are you going to do in the next 1 year to diminish the mentally retarded action of this guy?
He called him mentally R-worded Trump, and Kamala Harris's response was...
Well said. Well said. I plan to win this election, I'll tell you.
Bro, that's so funny that this is the attack ad from the RNC Research Lab. This is what you cooked up. If she keeps that momentum, is the RNC Research trying... If she keeps that momentum, that's free promo, okay? Because, like, obviously, those who would care about ableism are not going to care about ableism enough to be like, I'm not voting for whoever the Democrat is over Donald Trump. And all you're doing is like showing at least like people who are on the RNC research side, maybe in the margins, that like, she's a little bit more lighthearted than the annoying woke scoldy ass Democrats.
As well as different groups. You're going to continue to see throughout the afternoon different progressive groups and members of Congress come out and acknowledge their support for her. Yeah.
I was just going to say, we've got to take a quick break. We're going to continue all of our analysis, all of our reporting right after this. We'll be right back.
Okay, bro, they're farming commercial breaks harder than I do at the top of the hour, okay? God damn, dude. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, by the way. And if you no longer want to see those ads, if you want an uninterrupted broadcast experience, all you need to do is subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Twitch Primes are free. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Here is the 3-minute ad break now. It's coming for you. Terrible transition, decent on yours. Okay, my transition was good, dude. I used the Wolf transition to segue into the ad break. Come on now. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Okay.
Democratic nominee. It's been an extraordinary day of developments. We are just coming off on the heels of the Republican National Convention and that attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Of course, we were also just about 100 days out from the November election and also just a few weeks away from the Democratic National Convention. There are so many questions here about what happens next. Will Vice President Kamala Harris face a challenge on the Democratic side? How will the convention play out? She does not have a delegate just yet, but there are still just so much more to cover in this race as we continue to follow these extraordinary developments. Our team learned earlier today that this was a decision that was made very quickly by President Biden. His aides, his closest advisors, shocked by this decision as the president officially announces that he is stepping out of this race. As I mentioned earlier, our coverage continues on ABC News and abcnews.com. Again, we'll be right back here on World News.
Sir, the edits are pouring in. What do we do? You think Jill offered? Okay, dude. No, I don't think Jill Biden offered head if Joe Biden backs out. I think Jill Biden did not want Joe Biden to back out really bad. Where are the Kamala memes auntie pilled? What do you mean? She is like the most auntie coded auntie out there. What are we talking about? Like another edit, old but gold.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
By the way, for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is the reason why people say they're coconut pilled when talking about Kamala Harris, because she, whether deliberately or without recognizing, did historical materialism and basically said, like, you know, this is like all of history that came before it weighs on the consciousness of the newest generation. And it's true. It's a correct statement to make. And you know, that's why people say they're the coconut army. And by people, I mean us. We say we are the coconut army. Fuck the K-Hive. They were so fake. They were so goddamn fake, dude. I said, I am in awe. I'm shocked that all of the K-Hivers did not give a about Kamala Harris possibly replacing Joe Biden. And we're basically saying, like, no, Kamala Harris is not an adequate replacement. Meanwhile, Coconut Army rose up through the ranks and said they're coconut pilled and they are riding with Mamala. Okay, fake ass fans over at the K-Hive, phonies, all of them.
You exist in the context. Talking about the significance of the passage of time. Right? The significance of the passage of time. Kosher salt, fresh ground pepper, maybe chop up a little thyme. You could also chop up, but not with the thyme, just the salt and pepper. Mix that up also with some thyme. You could even do a little rosemary if you want. The context of all in which you live and what came before you. Based with butter. Yes, hi.
Kamala Brat edit. Thing that I do have to mention is that Kamala Harris being a black woman, Kamala Harris being an Indian woman, Kamala Harris coming from like Kamala Harris's dad, Donald Harris, being like a Stanford Marxist economist, is going to make the Republicans so crazy. And they're going to say, like, they're basically not going to be able to hold back. And here's James Lindsay doing exactly that. Let's talk about Kamala Harris saying, to see what can be unburdened by what has been. This phrase, which she repeats all the time, is not mysterious. It's esoteric. That is, it's a cult. It's a Marxist and Luciferian incantation. What? And that's easily seen. If you think that your dad and your mom that are like, you know, moderates, independents, who have voted for either party throughout their lives, are going to look at this and go, no, that's right. I'm actually also just as schizo as James Lindsay. You're wrong. I said this exact same thing about the trans panic, right? Trans panic and like right-wing populism that hyper-focused on like children's genitalia was objectively gross for the normal Republicans, for the normal voters. And that's why the red wave that was supposed to be a massive typhoon turned into a red puddle in the midterms. Okay, that was one of the big reasons why, like, this level of this kind of narrative going absolutely crazy mode on the timeline in front of all that running candidates that repeat terms like this specifically made it gross, too gross for people to vote for. And you saw that. You saw that in the electoral defeats that occurred in the midterms. So I think that there's one other aspect to this where Republicans just go balls to the wall and just start saying really insane that, you know, is off-putting. Really insane that's off-putting to normal Republicans. Okay? Gretchen Whitmer is 10x the candidate Kamala is, though. Yes, of course. I think Gretchen Whitmer is a significantly better candidate than Kamala Harris. I agree. but Kamala Harris is on the ticket, and Kamala Harris has the endorsement. It's the easiest swap out that shows that it is not a chaotic switchover, but instead a guided, well-directed, well-orchestrated choice that Biden made himself. If he keeps up being a petty bitch from this point on, and isn't just going along with like, this is what we did. I made this decision because I think she's great. I made this decision because I'm a fan. I made this decision. I chose her as my vice president because I had full confidence that she could be the president one day. If they don't do that, which I still don't know, but if they don't do that, and if they just like have messaging discipline and they ride with her from this point on until November, then the likelihood that she wins the race goes up by a lot. Oh, lazily taking the least confrontational choice is the best way to win. Neither the best way to win nor the best thing for voters. We need that open convention. I think you're wrong. I'll admit that I'm wrong if that happens and then it's like a banger, but I think that you're wrong on this. Like, I think that's a massive self-own. It'd be great for content. Like, it would be great. It would be great for content. Like, I'm talking 200K viewers average every day for me. Okay. But I still don't think it's the right idea for making sure that Donald Trump doesn't become president, you know?
It was not a matter of getting to the convention unless he was planning on staying in. If he was going to get out, he needed to get out right now, like the beginning of this week, in order to give whoever succeeds him, he wanted it to be his vice president, the best chance to consolidate the party. And that is already happening right now. I'm just speaking to several sources who are telling me Vice President Harris is calling around on Capitol Hill. She's calling around to Democratic organizations. She has a list of dozens of calls that she's making today and tonight. The message is what she said in her statement. You've been with us up until this point. I'm asking for your support. Stay with us. But the ball is in motion now. And she's starting, from what I've been told, with two of the biggest constituencies in the Democratic Party, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. She's made calls to the heads of both of those organizations today. That's, again, I keep having to emphasize this because I think when we talk about voters of color in the Democratic Party, it sounds like, a talking point, but this is a party that is powered by voters of color, by members of color, the DNC, the delegates who will eventually vote to decide who is the nominee. Those people, the most powerful figures in those constituencies are black men, black women, Hispanic men, Hispanic women. She knows that. She is working those lines, and I think she's trying to lock this in. As a source told me, a fundraising source told me, it's 24 to 48 hours. That is what people are looking at. And if she can show a real command of this race, it will be over within just a matter of days.
And Jim Clyburn
has
getting
a press
behind her,
conference
a lengthy
starting
statement,
at 5:15 in 5 minutes.
What President Biden said to endorse her as the next nominee. What does the next?
Robert F. Kennedy's got a press conference. We're really locked in on that. We'll get to it when he does it.
She's the heir apparent to this nomination, but she said, "I'm going to work to earn this nomination."
And that's what working to earn it looks like. You don't say the president named me and it's me, and because I'm a black woman, you have to give it to me, or you're sexist. She's not doing that. She is doing the hard work. She's calling the power centers in this party. She's calling black organizations. She's calling Hispanic organizations. I guarantee.
That would be so Hillary Clinton coded, and I'm glad that that's not what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's doing what needs to be done, and that's the way it's supposed to be. We are a party. We have rules for our rules to create the rules that make the rules. We are a rule-based party, and so she is following the rules.
And that is happening right now. I mean, look, this is a really critical period for the Democratic National Committee. They're having meetings. There's a meeting planned for the end of this week about the rules for the convention. And so this is happening right now. They're going to be putting it in overdrive, trying to establish what that process looks like for the convention with a nominee unsettled. So it's a high wire act right now for the entire party. They are aware of that. But right now, the work in the vice president's office is just moving at a frenzied pace.
And you want to see how smart it is, though. Because there is a process, if you think you've got a better shot, you can jump in the water. Kamala Harris, she said, look, the water's warm, jump in. But once you go through the process, then you have to support our nominee. And so we're going to have a process. It's going to be clear and transparent. Everybody's going to understand what it is. And then once we have a nominee, and it looks like it's going to be Kamala Harris, then everybody, you had your moment. If you want to jump in. The water's warm. But once we have a nominee, everybody has to get behind her.
I mean, and what does that look like, though, in the sense of for 3 weeks, we have seen a major division in the Democratic Party
Yes.
of those who thought Biden should get out and said it. A lot of people thought it and didn't say it because they didn't want to. They thought he should make it on his own. And then other people who were firmly behind him. I mean, it is a question of a unified front, what that looks like as we wait to see, does anyone else get in the race?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone that I have spoken to, there's no question that once the vice president, if she is able to consolidate this quickly and show strength and get the majority of the power centers in the party behind her, there will be an immediate effort to consolidate around her. And everyone that I've talked to believes that this change at the top is going to lead to an injection of an enormous amount of energy that, frankly, Caitlin, has been notably.
Joe Biden has served our country with honor and dignity as the first president to ever walk out on a picket line with striking workers. He has been the most pro-working class president in modern American history. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you've done. I mean, he's also a genocidaire, but Bernie doesn't give a fuck about that. But he's not wrong when he says he is the first president to ever walk on a picket line with striking workers. That's like objectively a true thing that Joe Biden did. It's like one of the things that I have defended Joe Biden on across the board against the naysayers. And I say this is someone who was not going to vote for Joe Biden. Like, I literally openly said, I ain't voting for Genocide Joe. I'm not doing it. And I openly said it. I openly said, I ain't voting for Joe Biden. And I know there's a lot of dudes in Michigan, a lot of people in Michigan who also feel the same way. There's a lot of people who are young that otherwise could be convinced to vote for someone else, but not for Biden. Okay? It's my red line. You want Trump to win so bad, man? If I wanted Trump to win so bad, I would have absolutely advocated for Joe Biden to stay in the race. Also, actually, no, if I want Trump to win so bad, I'll just advocate for Trump. What are you talking about? Like, you think there's a punishment for advocating for Trump? Are you kidding me? He was president for 4 years. If anything, online, right-wing content thrives. It would be better for me to advocate for Trump if that was my goal. I could literally just do that and probably get more donations and maybe even a Fox News slot as a regular commentator on there. I'm one of the largest political content creators on the planet. You think the Republicans wouldn't love to have me on their side? Are you kidding me? They actually do give a shit about independent voices, unlike the Democrats, okay? So dumb. Yeah, I definitely secretly want it. Anyway, the guy who, to a fault, is honest at all times, even when it causes so many people to yell at him, is gonna hide his motivations
24 hours,
here.
40 hours,
And
very, very
just
hard.
one quick thing, Caitlin. I mean, I was at the RNC, talked to Trump officials about this. They insist, obviously, that the race doesn't fundamentally change. They think Vice President Harris is fundamentally going to be painted the same way as President Biden. But at the same time, and the truth is, for the Biden campaign, they really had one main plan, which is to win the blue wall. The question is, does a vice presidential pick on Harris's part and her unique things that she brings to this race, does it close some doors? Does it open others? A lot of people have different views of that, but there is a calculus. It's not just a clear advantage in one direction. There's going to be it's going to be a disadvantage in some areas, an advantage in others, depending on what she decides about a vice presidential pick, and that's going to change the map for sure.
Yeah, safe to say it has fundamentally changed. Wolf, back to you.
All right, Caitlin, thank you. I want to get back to our panel right now. And Audie, let me start with you on this block because as we know, the Democratic convention in Chicago is coming up in a couple of weeks or so. Early voting.
I can't wait to go to the convention, baby.
Actually starts.
I can't wait to go to the convention. Oh my God. Oh my God. It is going to be, I'm going to be nutting. Okay. Big weeks are ahead of us. Big weeks are ahead of us. Next week, I'm going to Texas. Obviously, I'm going to be playing in the Creator League for one day, but obviously in between, I'm going to be still streaming nonstop. And then, the DNC. I'm going to be in Chicago. I've never been to Chicago, by the way, guys. I've never been to Chicago in my entire life. I've never been to Illinois. My first time in Chicago, and I'm going to be at the mother freaking DNC. Oh, my Lord.
That's the earliest they can meet. They did happen to have a meeting scheduled for Friday. I'm going to say they probably won't make it to Friday. And they will have to decide. I think one of the goals, though, between now and then is to continue to see this strong show of support. I don't know, maybe some of the folks who've also been named as people who might run in an open primary may throw their support behind her and sort of take their names.
You need to go a little bit further.
Out of contention.
What do you know, Finny?
Are we looking at a food fight?
Well, I think most folks have come to recognize, particularly after the last 3 weeks where we have had so much more time talking about Joe Biden than Donald Trump, we would really like to not have that happen and let the convention be an affirmation of our party and an opportunity to thank Joe Biden. And so, again, I think what you're going to continue to see organizations, members of Congress coming out, claiming their support. I mean, I've seen even people who are currently pledged delegates saying, hey, I'm with Joe Biden says that's who I should support. That's who I'm going to support. They'll still have to figure out a process. The delegates are still going to have to vote.
And that's a footnote here, too, because when I talk about it being orderly, yes, there's the money in the message.
RFK's live? Okay, bro.
Approach the process thinking, I have gotten this far. I am worth so much. This is going to be something that I'm going to be able to do with relatively little problem. Well, call Ron DeSantis and ask him how that went, okay?
Right.
Like, there's a reason why Republicans, for example, usually nominate someone who's running the second time around. Donald Trump, that wasn't true, but look at Mitt Romney, look at Bob Dole, look like all the way back, because actually running is something that is unlike any other test that exists in American politics. And honestly,
the
none
national
of those people
debt
that
is
were
a
up on that
problem,
screen
though.
has
Yeah,
been
no,
through it.
totally. No, you're right, man. Definitely. What are you, like a Republican from 1998? What are you talking about? The national debt is a problem. It's literally, it has always been a dead issue. Like, Republicans only fake care about it in an effort to, like, cut social safety nets. That's it. Yeah. It's like America trying to do IMF to itself, directed by psychopathic Republicans. And I got like 40-month subscribers in the chat being like, no, we need IMF-style austerity measures in this goddamn country. No, man, that's not how that works, okay? It doesn't work that way. We don't do that. We do that to other countries, okay? We don't do that to ourselves.
Tried to incite a bloody insurrection, who has any number of things that could turn your stomach. We would stick with him with that extraordinary loyalty. I don't even know if you call that. I think it's loyalty to a fault. So, look, the Democrats are a big tent. Sometimes it's a tumultuous tent. But I think in the end, we represent more Americans than the Republicans do.
And if
He's
I may
right
put you
that.
on the spot, who do you think that she might bring to run on this ticket with her? We're hearing several names floated out.
Yeah, sure. I'll let her make that decision. I would say this: it's a deep bench, and you know, I'm loyal to my own governor, who's done a great job, J.B. Pritzker. But I'm sure she will pick the person that she can work with and gives her the best opportunity to win in November. I don't think it'll be a senator. The reasons mentioned before, it's virtually a 50-50 Senate, and you don't want to take anybody off that bench.
So looking at some of these Democratic governors across the state. All right, Mike Quigley, thank you so much for spending our time with us, Representative. We really, really appreciate that.
Boy
and we'll
on
be
the
seeing
ticket.
you here in August when we all head to Chicago. So we appreciate your time.
Welcome to Chicago.
All right. I want to now bring in ABC News' Philip Boff. He's joining us there from New York. So, Phil, it sounds like we're just getting some information here about what the DNC's overall efforts that's happening right now to...
It's under the Illinois Oblast, which is under the control of JB, the protectorate. It is literally, the DNC is happening under the comfortable banner of the JB protectorate. I'm just saying, dude, he's the guy. Chicago Oblast, Illinois Oblast, very own JB.
This, sort of, it's a letter that is going out to people to shore up support for Kamala Harris. So we just got it. Let me read a little bit of it to you.
I'd be stoked on that.
Dear fellow Democrats, we are current and former members of the Democratic National Committee. We are proud to steadfastly support Joe Biden in his run to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. It goes on to say, we are deeply grateful to President Biden and his family for their decades of service to our nation. But then it says, we strongly and enthusiastically endorse Vice President Kamala Harris, the candidate with the best experience and capacity to unite the party and the United States for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. We ask that you join us. And then it is signed by dozens of members. I won't go through them, but members from California all the way to Florida and states in between. No doubt the list will grow as this letter circulates around. But Kana, very obvious as we're talking about what happens next, that members of the Democratic National Committee, as they say, both current and former, are looking to shore up support for Vice President Kamala Harris, so that it's more really, President Biden has endorsed her, that it's really more of an anointing instead of having, more infighting that we've seen so far.
Right, which is exactly what we're hearing from some Democratic leadership here, is that they don't want this to be a coronation, especially after the primary that the American people just experienced, in which there wasn't really a choice. Joe Biden was the one on the ticket. But also, Phil, when you look through this letter, right, I mean, it really lists off, not only the Democratic, policies that are crucially important, but it is very critical of Donald Trump. And they even go back to some really specific things, and they write here what Donald Trump's botched and uncaring let them drink bleach approach to Americans suffering and dying from the COVID pandemic. This is pretty ruthless language here.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see moving forward. There was this moment after, it seems like more than a week ago, but it's just now a week after that horrific assassination attempt where people were talking about unity, and you saw at that point President Biden paused his campaign, pulled down some negative ads. But now, when you read this letter, and you're right, Kana, it reads as a coalescing, but also, their sharp aim at Donald Trump.
Bro, it's done. It's over. Like that was last week. In this media landscape, it might as well have been 80 years ago. Okay? Like absolutely zero Americans care about that currently. Straight up. Like it's actually kind of crazy. In my mind, I've been covering the news nonstop. And to me, it feels like it happened months ago. Like it feels like it happened at least a month ago. It has only been 7 days. It's crazy. And I told you guys that if Biden drops out post RNC, it would destroy any kind of Republican framing. And it already caused the Republicans to panic and start launching boulders, launching daggers at the Democrats anyway. So much for that unity drive, okay? There's no unity whatsoever. I mean, they were never going to unite anyway. Republicans don't know how that works.
There are a furious amount of phone calls being had between top Democratic members about who to get behind for the presidential nomination, who to get behind for the potential VP pick under a Harris nominee, assuming she gets the nomination. And Harris herself reaching out to key members of the House and Senate Democratic caucus, we are told, as well as Harris's team trying to reach out to some of the senators, I'm told, who have not yet made an endorsement, trying to shore up some critical support at this time. Also, Joe Biden himself, this move very much blindsiding even top Democrats. We're told that he has recently reached out to Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader. That came after Joe Biden went public with his announcement that he would drop out from this race. Now, Wolf, both sides are now gaming out the impact that a Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee would have down ticket. Recall the big concern among Democrats was that if Joe Biden were at the top of the ticket, he essentially would sink their chances at keeping the Senate and taking back the House. Now that if Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket, what does that mean down ticket to these races? A number of Democrats that I've spoken to believe that they believe she could shore up support from some younger voters, from minority voters, people who have been voters who have actually not been fraying from the Biden coalition. Perhaps he can energize that base. Republicans, on the other hand, believe that they can very much tie Harris to all the policies that they believe will make her toxic to some of those more swing district Republicans, swing district Democrats.
Chatters who are crying because they have very valid fears of misogyny. You need to understand something very important. Republicans have been desperately trying to move away from the issue of abortion. The moment that they start saying misogynistic things, because they will, because they can't stop themselves, is the moment that the conversation centers around women's reproductive rights. Please understand, the conversation will be reshaped around what the Republicans want to do to women. Republicans will eat that bait voluntarily. Let them. Yeah, women win elections all the time. Republicans being weird towards women will hurt them. This is in 1992. Yeah, guys, come on. Mexico voted for a Jewish woman. Like, what are we talking about? Like, that's your background is not as important as the way people think it is in America. You can absolutely, it will give you disadvantages. It'll make it harder for you to overcome certain disadvantages. But Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she was a woman, okay? She lost because she was an uncharismatic woman with a ton of oppo behind her who everybody despised, who was a representative of the elite, the Democratic Party's elite, at a time when people were looking for actual change. And Donald Trump basically presented himself as like a more moderate candidate than the rest of the Republicans on issues that actually mattered, like cutting Social Security and even on the gay, she was like, yeah, I don't care. He waved the LGBT flag. And then he didn't follow through on any of that. And obviously people, remember the chaos and awfulness of having to pay attention to politics for 4 years. So that's why it's a very different election in 2020 and a very different election in 2024 now. But like, even then, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. But Hillary didn't lose because she was a woman, okay? That's silly. She lost because she sucks. Not to say that Kamala Harris won't campaign poorly. She might. But right now is entirely too early.
Donald Trump, where they say Kamala Harris is easy to beat, that she is not going to be a threat at the top of the ticket. But the reality is, when you really get through these conversations with some of his top political advisors, they are aware that any shift in the race could shift their planning. They know that there was an enthusiasm gap for President Joe Biden. How does moving that ticket around, even with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, shift that enthusiasm gap? They don't want any more turnout for Democrats in the fall. Obviously, if there's more enthusiasm around whoever the candidate is, that is going to lead to likely more turnout at the polls. So obviously all of this they are watching closely, but much of it is unfolding for them in real time.
Yeah, and what are you hearing in the sense of, we're already seeing attacks from well-funded Trump super PACs going after Harris. It's not, we don't know actually who's going to be the Democratic nominee, Kristen. So obviously it's a bit of a holding period for the Trump campaign.
And it has been a holding period for several weeks. That's why whenever they were coming out and attacking Harris, you were also seeing them kind of starting to vaguely attack some of these high-profile Democratic governors because they don't know exactly what the campaign is going to look like. The other thing to talk about here is the fact that Donald Trump's team, they haven't spent a lot of money on advertising, but they have spent millions of dollars on modeling, on data collection, on formulating an entire campaign based on that was to beat President Joe Biden. This looks completely different with whoever else is on the ticket. That is why you're also going to hear Donald Trump, if it is potentially Vice President Kamala Harris, going after her as saying she is part of the Biden administration. They believe that is one of their biggest assets, painting a broad brush, because again, what they've prepared for is running against Biden, his policies, his administration, him as a person, but also they are hoping they can loop Kamala Harris into that, which is why, again, they are hoping that she likely is at the top of the ticket, but they are saying to me that they are preparing for all scenarios right now.
Yeah, a lot of scenarios to prepare for there. Kristen Holmes, thank you for that. Keep us updated on what you're hearing. And David Axelrod joins us at the table now. David, I just heard from a source familiar that says the Biden campaign just did an all call with staff who obviously totally shell-shocked by this decision, and that Jen O'Malley Dillon and Julie Rodriguez, who are running this campaign, talked about moving full steam ahead. They said everyone on that campaign still has a job. Obviously, they believe they are now working for Harris. But what are the actual calculations happening inside the Democratic Party about who the nominee is and who can beat Trump?
Yeah, look, I think that the vice president clearly has an advantage in this and may well be the putative nominee, but
I hope not.
I do think, the reason that people are holding back.
I hope not. From the brilliant minds that gave us the early debate for Joe Biden. Yeah, I don't know about that.
States that a Democrat has to win, and it's still the states that Joe Biden had to win: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. There is a sense that the Sun Belt states may be a bridge too far. Pennsylvania has always been sort of the tipping state. Both campaigns pointed to as the one that the Democrats had to have. Trump has other paths. So the question is who can run well in those states. And the question they're asking about the VP is how will she run in those states? And that's why you're seeing the names you're seeing in terms of the vice presidential candidates. Obviously, Josh Shapiro would give them a good chance in the state of Pennsylvania. Mark Kelly, who's a war hero and an astronaut and a moderate with a strong record on border issues. He's also from a battleground state, would offer another set of assets to them. But they need to demonstrate. It's fine to mobilize the CBC and the Hispanic caucus. They need to, make a case to the whole country as to why she should be president, why she'd be the strongest candidate for president, and B, they need to talk to these governors and swing state senators and members of Congress and say, here is why I think I can help.
One of the interesting, you described it as a precise thing, and I think it is definitely sort of like threading this very delicate needle at this moment. But the other aspect of this is the unknowns about some of these other names. And that's the thing I think that gives people a lot of heartburn as they're deliberating over who really should be at the top of the ticket. If they had their fantasy pick, which is how some of these have described it as a fantasy football, but a fantasy pick, right? But what does, Gretchen Whitmer look like as an actual candidate to be a president of the United States? How does she, actually help the Democrats, having not really been on the national stage before? And that's probably true of all of these other figures, a Josh Shapiro, a Gavin Newsom, all of them. And so there is a sort of imprecision to what happens outside of Kamala Harris that I think is causing a lot of stress right now inside of the party. There are people who want someone else, but they also have to prove that those other people are not going to come with downsides that, frankly, they just don't know about yet because they haven't been on the scene.
The strongest case for Kamala is that she's battle tested.
Right.
You don't imagine there's going to be some new skeleton to fall out the closet because she's been on the national stage. She went through a national campaign. So there's I think a certainty you can have. At least you know what you're dealing with Kamala Harris. I think with some of the other folks, if you just had ChatGPT or Spock or a Martian, just as kind of like mathematically, you'd say you got to win Michigan, you got to win Pennsylvania, you got to win Wisconsin. And so you say, well, look, you got a Democratic governor or two of those three states. So
very popular one.
And very popular. Shapiro is popular. Gretchen is popular. And so you might start there. And but then what about she's female? What about anti-Jewish stuff? You would start at least considering those different possibilities. And so that process needs to play out. Yeah. Because if you don't let that process play out, and you say, well, just because she's a VP, you got to take her. Well, you know what, VPs.
He's talking about Shapiro being Jewish.
He got skipped.
Like he's saying it's a weakness that Kamala Harris, it can be perceived as a weakness that Kamala Harris is a woman and Josh Shapiro is Jewish.
And there's only a couple months left. And one of the other things, I'm hearing.
They're not talking about her husband. Her husband is Jewish too. Who gives a
Just to throw out something else that I have heard when I've talked to Democrats is that some people say, well, if she can open up the map in other ways, right? Roy Cooper, maybe opening up North Carolina, maybe that's a better state for her than Pennsylvania.
Although not enough, right? but not enough electoral votes to make up for it. So she'd lose if that were the exchange she made.
More than that. It wouldn't be enough.
Right, exactly.
So I guess what I'm saying is that just to tell you what I'm hearing from people, there is the blue wall, right? But there's also a calculation about how else might she change the map. Maybe it does bring some of the Sunbelt states back. Maybe it does bring a Georgia back. These are unknown. I cannot stress enough. People cannot take the data to the bank on this stuff because it's not factored in what we don't know about these other potential candidates.
Yeah, a lot of questions here. And David, I want to get your thoughts on the prospect of a delegate vote, but we do got to squeeze in a quick break.
One, it's not tested yet. HasanAbi ACAB means all except Kamala, right? I'm so stoked to vote for her, unironically. I mean, listen, it depends. It depends on what she does going forward. I'm not going to sit here and immediately endorse Kamala Harris, okay? You can if you want to, and I'm glad that you guys are very excited. But the reality of the matter is, this is why I keep stressing the importance of the upcoming days in terms of messaging. Will they take advantage of this like fresh slate, this new opportunity that has been